a world where the number of movies available is great, but many are so bad. You'll learn a new definition of hate. One man sifts and reviews through the movie sludge. One man will be the movie cop, jury, and judge. He goes by many names, but you know him by Movies Merica.
Hey there, my fellow movie maniacs. It's the man with the master plan. They call me Van. And on this episode, we will be going over the movie The Northman. Yes. And by the end of this episode, you will truly know whether or not you want to check out this movie. So hey, let's roll that jingle. Hey, all you beautiful movie-loving people out there, live from a red carpet somewhere, surrounded by celebrities. This is the Movies Merica podcast with Van Ebert, where movie reviews meet cold brews. Van will review your favorite and maybe not so favorite movies while enjoying some ice-cold beers and saying cheers. Now let's head into the theater and join our illustrious movie reviewer du jour, who's no doubt got the beer ready to pour, Van Ebert. I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will cure you, Fjolnir. This is a Viking saga on this episode of Movies Merica podcast. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me here today. And as you can tell, I am in a Vikings mood. That's right. Yes, not the football team, the legendary historical barbarians of Norse legend. That's what mood I'm in. And without further ado, let me give you the proper introduction to The Northman.
Now, behold.
He's here. He's here.
Mother! Father is here!
The king, my lady. The king.
Your fate is set and you cannot escape it. How I've missed you, my son. One day this kingdom will be yours.
Thank you, father. My king.
Fjolnir! I will avenge you, father! I will save you, mother! I will kill you, Fjolnir!
I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you, Fjolnir.
Why would he stow away to such a hellish place?
To find what was stolen from me.
And what is that?
The kingdom.
You must choose between kindness for your kin or hate for your enemies.
Your strength breaks men's bones. I have the cunning to break their minds.
And night by night, we will carry out my pledge of vengeance. I will avenge you, father.
I will avenge you, father.
That trailer makes me want to go out and crank the Norwegian death metal. That is for sure. Hey, everyone. Again, thanks for checking out this episode of Movies Merica Podcast. Again, I am your humble host, Van Ebert. And we will get into the review here in just a quick bit, but just wanted to go over some much needed info. Of course, I got to keep you guys updated and let you know that this podcast, of course, is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many other podcast platforms, as I'm sure you know. And if you happen to be on Apple Podcast, formerly known as iTunes, feel free to scroll all the way to the very bottom of all the episodes. And please please give it a 5-star rating. I know I sound pathetic right now, but I am not above begging, unfortunately. So, and while you're down there giving me a 5-star rating, you know what? Hey, why not, stay a while. Take your feet off, take your shoes, take your feet off. Take your shoes off and give it a quick review as well. Hey, the review can be something as simple as, hey, this podcast is dynamic, or this podcast really sucks. Ugh. Smells just as bad as those feet I took off. Yeah, see, there you go. I'm obsessed with feet. And then also, if you go to the very top right there, if you hit the 3 little dots, there's a follow show or follow podcast option there. So go ahead and click on that. And it'll just conveniently download all those episodes for you. It's like one less thing for you to do during the day, right? And also the podcast is available on moviesmerica.com. And if you want to reach out to me, the best way to do that is under Movies Merica on Twitter and Instagram. I put posts out there and, with little pearls of wisdom, I would call them. But, you guys probably wouldn't call them that. But, hey, you know what? Just whenever I feel like I feel like everyone is just dying to know what Van, Ebert, and Movies Merica have to say about a movie, I like to put a post out there on Twitter and Instagram. So, yeah, absolutely. And you can DM me out there and, tell me how terrific or terrible I am by all means. All right? And then also, just to let you know here, and I've said this in the last few episodes, but we're coming to a close of this. Typically, I drink a beer, and I like to enjoy beer as I'm doing my movie reviews because those are 2 of my loves. But for like the last 2.5 months, I haven't been able to drink a beer because I have been on the 75 Hard Fitness program where you can't drink. I know it's barbaric. Funny enough, I should put it that way since we're talking about the Northman. It's absolutely barbaric, but hey, it's a little sacrifice. But that ends this Friday. So on the very next episode, I will be getting into the land of barley and hops again. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay. Hey, so enough about that. Let's get into the Northman. That's what you guys are here for, right? Yeah, that's what puts your butt in the seat to listen to this episode, The Northman. Yes. So Northman, it is directed by Robert Eggers. Now, he is a up-and-coming director. If you know any film nerds, they just go goo-goo gaga over Robert Eggers. And he is more of a kind of an art house film director. He is not Spielberg. He is definitely not Michael Bay. He's not Zack Snyder by a long shot. He's like none of those guys. He's very arty, for lack of a better way of putting it. And this movie reflects that. Okay, this is I should let you know, if you're expecting this movie right off the bat to be like Braveheart like, or to be like Gladiator, or it's just non-stop slam bang edge of your seat action, like just every second your eyeballs are on the screen. Yeah, nope, it is not that at all. It's good. I mean, it's got action, it's got fighting, it's got some really cool action scenes in it, but yeah, it's more of a kind of a spiritual feel to it, but with kind of punctuated with scenes of of action, fighting and attacks on villages and gore and blood and guts and that kind of thing. And I think the movie that I think it resembles the most is Excalibur. If you remember Excalibur, I mean, just picture way back to the year 1981. Okay. And John Boorman, legendary filmmaker John Boorman, came out with a adaptation of the Arthurian legend called Excalibur. And it is a lot like this movie, where it's not, it's not just your straightforward action, swords and armor and knights and dragons. It's not just this mainstream conventional, like, all the, what a lot of people consider like just normal moviegoers. They call them normies. Just basically the film goers that aren't like big film fanatics are just like, oh, hey, I got $20 to burn, I'm going to go see a movie. Like, those are normies. Okay, they're not like film experts or cinephiles or film aficionados. There you go. So it's not an action movie that like the normies would really like. I mean, I saw the movie, and the movie ends kind of abruptly, and it just the theater was just like pitch black. It was like just stone quiet when the end credits started rolling, and I think that as long as you go into this movie not expecting slam bang action spectacle and just just nonstop kinetic action energy, then you'll be fine. I liked the movie, but I didn't love the movie. I am not as big a cinephile, I guess, as some of my fellow movie reviewers, because a lot of them, when there's slow parts in this movie, or there's slow parts in any movie, and there's a lot of slow parts in this movie, it's a very slow burn, they are wowed. They go wowie zowie over the technical craftsmanship, and that's enough to make them love love this movie, in spite of the lack of epic action, that is not in this movie. They're going gaga, over the lighting and over the pacing and just over just all kinds of like technical aspects of it. If you're Mr. and Mrs. Normie going to the movie theater, you don't care about any of that, right? You just know what looks good and what doesn't look good, right? You what looks cool on the screen to you and what doesn't. You don't care how the sausage is made, right? And so you're not intrigued by that. You just plunk down, $30 for two of you to go see a movie, and you don't really care about oh hey, yeah, did they use what frames per second did they use right here, and oh hey, what kind of dolly setup did they use there? I mean, you don't care. You just want to be entertained, right? And so yeah, if you're not into that kind of stuff, yeah, you're the lack of action and the kind of the slow pace might get to you. But maybe, just maybe, if you go into it knowing that ahead of time, I think you'll like it. You just got to give it a chance. And just know that the movie's more about atmospherics and it just kind of more of it's got a lot of mysticism in it, like Norse mysticism, and it's kind of it's I don't know how to put it. Okay, it's not trying to be Gladiator. It's not trying to be Braveheart. I think it's trying to be more of a character study and kind of present kind of a deeper take on your traditional revenge tale, because the basic story or the base story to this movie is a lot like hey, who would believe it, The Lion King, right? Okay, so I mean, like in that movie, you got your main protagonist and his father is killed by his uncle, except in there, it was Mufasa, killed by his brother Scar, and instead of a Viking, it's Simba, is pledged to revenge, or I don't know if he pledged to revenge his father, but he ends up taking out Scar, or Scar takes itself out at the end. And so in this movie, it's Amleth, played by Alexander Skarsgård. He's the prince. He's the one whose father is killed, and his father is played by Ethan Hawke, and then his father is killed by his brother, Fjolnir, and Amleth sees this all go down, sees his father being killed by his brother, Amleth's uncle, Fjolnir, and Amleth pledges revenge for his father. That's where that whole phrase, I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you, Fjolnir. That's where that comes from. And so that's not a very complicated plot, right? Very, very, very basic, but Robert Eggers, the director, and the screenwriters are going for something a little bit more deep than that as the movie progresses. And you'll see that just the dialogue and the back and forth between Amleth and then Olga is another character that he meets later on in the movie. Who's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who's an up-and-coming actress that you may know from like Last Night in Soho, and then she was in that movie Split with James McAvoy playing. James McAvoy was playing the character, the Beast, that has all these different personalities, and Anya Taylor-Joy was one of the cheerleaders that he kidnaps, and she's also known for the show The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. And so she plays Olga, but Amleth meets her later on, and they just have just the back and forth in their relationship, and just the character arc between the two of them, the relationship arc, shows you that this movie is trying to be a little something deeper than Braveheart or Gladiator, or even like Troy with Brad Pitt and Eric Bana. So if you can appreciate that, and then also the character Fjolnir, his uncle that kills his father, they flesh out his character too, or he's not just this one-dimensional mustache twirling villain, in the movie. He's got some depth, and he's got some human compassion to him. Now you'll see what you see with that character getting towards the end of the movie. And so I mean, this movie, just because like I mentioned, there's the revenge factor in it, and also it reminds me of Conan the Barbarian. Remember what happened at the beginning of that movie, right? Conan's father is killed, Conan's mother is killed right in front of him, and he pledges revenge, for his parents against Thulsa Doom. And so because of that, the Northman is like Conan the Barbarian. Now, just to show you that I don't love this movie as much as a lot of my movie reviewer friends do, to illustrate that, I thought Conan the Barbarian was a better movie than this. Now that might be considered sacrilege, because Conan the Barbarian is not considered an art house movie, right? It's not an independent movie. It entertained me. It met the requirement that I appreciate in a movie. It just entertains me. It entertains me, or it informs me in an entertaining way. So it's infotainment. And Conan the Barbarian was better than this movie, I think, in that regard. But this movie is still a good movie, and I can appreciate it. I don't need all my action. I don't need all my my Viking and swords and armor and dragons and jousting movies to just be be a straightforward action flick. I don't need that. I prefer that, but I don't need that. I mean, I'm open-minded enough, and I like to think that I'm eclectic enough to where I can appreciate other types of movies than that. But film directors coming out with art kind of movies like this, don't push it. You got to have some action in it, and this movie does have action in it. I think what helps make up for the lack of action for me, though, is I do kind of like the spiritual mysticism aspect of it, and it's just the fact that this movie is very it's very meat and potatoes in that it's not trying to be stylish, it's not trying to be stylistic, and that includes it's not trying to stylize the violence. The violence is very just very straightforward, very brutal. And you may hear some people talk about like, oh, this movie is so gory, it's so gruesome, and I was like, to be honest with you, and maybe I'm desensitized, but I don't think it's any more gruesome and gory than your average episode of Game of Thrones. Matter of fact, I think Game of Thrones has a lot more gruesome effects and all that than this movie does. I mean, not to say that this movie is, it's not exactly Finding Nemo. It's not a cartoon. It's got brutality, in it. But it's not like like everyone's like, oh, it's the gore fest of the century. No, it's not. It's not. But, hey, to each your own. You might watch it like, oh, my God, what are you talking about, Van? This is the bloodiest thing I've ever seen. To me, it wasn't. But, hey, you know what? You're entitled to your opinion for show. And now I mentioned the character Prince Amleth. Well, that sounds a little bit like Hamlet to you. Well, Shakespeare's Hamlet was based on this tale of Amleth. Prince Hamlet from Denmark. He was not the first. Amleth here in this tale of the Northman. That was Shakespeare's inspiration for that. And so and then you've got his mother in this movie played by Nicole Kidman, and you've got Fjolnir. He's kind of like the King Claudius, from Hamlet, and so it's all ties together, but that's where William Shakespeare gets the Hamlet play from. I will say another thing about this movie that I was impressed with was the historical accuracy. If you look at the shields and especially the shields they have on the sides of the long ships, just the buttressing of the leather and just the nails and the planks and the long ships were pretty historically accurate. The weaponry was accurate there too. They didn't have like horses doing like acrobatic moves that would never have taken place back in those days, according to Vikings historians. The closest to the Norse legends and the mentions of Odin, and then this like the seastress, and just all the mentions of the the tree of eternals, I think is what it was called. And then you talk about the Valkyries. There's a scene with talking about the Valkyries carrying warriors up to Valhalla, and all of that is very accurate. According to Vikings historians, it's just and the fighting that they have in it, I like how in the fighting scenes they don't kind of cut all over the place with the edits. Like you get some movies where the director, when they're watching the playback, they realize like, oh man, none of these actors know how to fight. They're looking all clumsy and they look pathetic, and so they got to like quick cut all the fighting scenes to make it to where you can't see that these guys don't know how to fight. Well, in this movie, they definitely train them up very well, and they portray it in a realistic way, because they go into a village, and there's people trying to defend the village. There's like men trying to defend the village, and they are like just husbands and sons that are just kind of part of the town militia. They don't really know how to fight, at least not compared to like the berserker Vikings that attack their village. And that's one of the things about Amleth in this movie is he's, after he basically makes his escape after his father is killed, he becomes what they call a berserker, and he is just he's at that point when he becomes a berserker, he's exactly like he's berserk. He turns into just an animal, right? Just a roaring like bear wolf. That's kind of what they call him in this movie. He's like a bear wolf. He's got like the power and the ferocity and the size of a bear, but with the cunning of a wolf. And he portrays Amleth like you can imagine a character like Amleth was back then. I mean, he's not a hero. I mean, at least not by 2022 standards, right? He is not virtuous. He will kill innocent people as a berserker, as a Viking going in there and pillaging villages. And he is not, he's not Captain America. He's not your, what we consider a hero in these days. And he just has this, this kinetic ferocity to him in this. And then he has a character arc from there in the movie. But it's it's a movie that also features some great characterizations as well. You've got Willem Dafoe. He plays like the I guess the Viking version of a court jester in this movie, and he's definitely he's definitely a character in this movie. He's not in there very long, but he's one of the introducers of the Vikings mysticism. Ethan Hawke, like I mentioned before, he plays Amleth's father, and he's in it very briefly. He brings a voice. He talks in this movie like you've never heard Ethan Hawke talk, that's for sure. So he sounds nothing like he did in Training Day or Dead Poets Society. That is for sure. But who else we got in this movie? We got I believe his name is Claes Bang. He plays Fjolnir, the main villain in this movie. And I've liked him. I thought I recognized him when I saw him in the trailer. I was like, is that the guy from Netflix's version of Dracula? Because Netflix came out with a Dracula limited series a couple years ago or something like that. And this guy who plays Fjolnir, Claes Bang, he played Dracula. And the first season of that show was pretty good. He played a very effective Dracula. Now that movie or that show had gore in it. That was pretty bloody and gory. It was a Dracula tale, and he was pretty good in that. And he's a multi-dimensional villain in this movie here. And he adds some credibility to the role, and the movie almost makes him kind of sympathetic in some cases. But, so he brings a well-rounded villain in this movie. Another thing about this movie is that the lighting, I think, is very realistic because, as you can imagine, back in these days, in the Vikings days, I mean, they didn't have overhead lighting. They didn't have key lights. They didn't have, they didn't have, like, work lights or big electrical lights or anything like that. They just had candles, right? They had fire and candles. And so a lot of the scenes are very darkly lit, where you can barely see anything, and that's just more of the realism that Robert Eggers was looking for. And a lot of his movies are like that. His movies he did before this here that got a lot of critical acclaim, The Witch and The Lighthouse, they're the same way. If you watch them, you'll see a resemblance to this movie where they're very darkly lit. They both take place in the past too, and none of them take place in current day. The Witch takes place like back in Puritan times in New England, and The Lighthouse takes place in like New England, like in the 19th century or something like that. And it's all in black and white. And so so they wanted to make it as real as possible, and that they had like Vikings historians on the set, because you have to. I mean, filmmakers naturally, they want to Hollywoodize up everything, right? They want to Hollywood it up, and and the most humble director's like, okay, I gotta have like some historians on my set because I need to have them stop me when I'm like, hey, how about what if they have this kind of sword fight up here and they're balancing up here, and then they have the horse jump over here, and the historian's like, okay, there's no way that the horse could have jumped that far and with that much. You have to have historians that are like kind of just bring the film directors back down to earth, to lend to to create the more realistic vibe to the movie here. Now, one thing that happened in this movie that I don't know if it's very realistic or not, but I just thought it was cool, and you see it in the trailer, is when somebody throws a spear from a village towards Amleth as him and the rest of his berserkers are out in the field, and you see a spear get thrown at Amleth, and he catches it in midair and just throws it back at the guy who threw the spear and hits him right in the chest. I don't know. I mean, a historian might have been like, I don't know how realistic that would have been. Would have been pretty hard to catch that spear, but it looks cool though. It looks very cool, and that scene in the trailer, that moment in the trailer, that is one of the big things that made me want to go, check out this movie. But yeah, I mean, this movie is, just be prepared. It's not action packed. It's not like, second, it's just every moment is action. I kind of knew that going in because I saw Robert Eggers' 2 previous movies, and they're very slow burns. You know, they're very not a whole lot goes on in them. But when something goes on in them, it's very interesting and entertaining as long as you know what you're going into. But check this movie out. I would give it my recommendation to go see it if you can keep in mind, you know, what I asked, you know, what I advised you to keep in mind going into it. And I think you may very well like it, okay? Okay, well, hey, everyone, as usual, thanks a lot for checking out this episode. Tell your friends and your family all about it. Check me out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Please give it a 5-star rating and a review if you would. And hey, everybody, get out there. Those movies aren't going to watch themselves. See ya.
Hey guys, don't leave the video quite yet. Okay, I've got a popo. They're coming after me, and I don't have much time to tell you, but you need to like and subscribe this video right here, down below. It's right down there. It's just waiting. It's waiting for you down there, okay? And make sure you watch these videos over here too. You'll be doing me a big favor. I'm gonna be in handcuffs pretty soon. All right. Thanks for watching.